Welcome back to Global War 1939. We just started round 14. We're actually not going to finish round 14, as the Germans did make their attempt into Berlin, and as you can tell, they failed. They were able to manage, they did get rid of all the infantry, but didn't get nowhere near the armor to recapture it. So sitting in Berlin, we still got the 8 medium armor, the 3 light armor, and 2 Marines. Anything that the Germans could get in there, they had 3 medium tanks, 3 medium tanks, 8 Mark IVs, 2 more Mark IVs, and infantry. The battle went to round 3 of fighting, where the Germans lost their last land-based unit to engage. So I believe, and the Italians can't get there. They're too far away. So that would be the game. So this is we're going to declare it Allied victory. Now, just thinking in a situation like this, in a war like this, so this went to 14 rounds. And the game is, as far as I'm aware, or in time frame, each turn is worth 6 months in time. So every 2 turns would be a year. So this would be a 7-year war. So whether that be mid 1946, by the time this ended. So if the war did play out the way this game played out, what would it, once all the treaties were signed for peace, what would actually happen with all this territory? Would the Germans be forced to give all this back to the Russians? Would Russia even be a country anymore now that the state, pretty much all they have is Siberia? Would all this get broken up in smaller kingdoms? How would Poland look after this? Would they gain the land from the Germans like they did in reality? What about the Italians? Would they be forced to give up this? It's looking very, very much like the Roman Empire, at least this side of the map. So would they be forced to give all this back to their French and the Egyptians? What about India? India's been completely conquered. Would they rejoin the Commonwealth or go independent or become a satellite of Japan? Same thing with China. Would they become dependent of Japan? Or would this be forced back to their rightful owners? Interesting questions. But yeah, so definitely a Allied victory. The turn when the game was going on, it was probably round 5, around round 4, round 5, and I was looking at the states. The UK wasn't really doing a lot. The Americans just joined, and I wasn't quite sure if they would have a big impact, as even when they're in the war, it does take them a couple turns to get going and to get across the Atlantic, if you're going Germany first, or the Pacific if you're going Japan first. But the biggest surprise was once the Normandy battle was secured for the Allies, that took 3 turns. The British would land, the Germans would counter, and that went back and forth until the Germans failed. Once that happened, then the Allies didn't look back. They just kept going. Every turn, they just went territory after territory. Any defense that the Germans laid down to put a stopgap, and what they were trying to do is put a defense down, hold the wall, get another buy to back them up before they went back on the assault. There was a couple times where I'm like, maybe the Allies are going to get pushed out. But no, that didn't happen. They just kept going and pretty much steamrolled right to Berlin. So it was definitely a great job between Britain, US, and my home country of Canada to get in there and just drive them back straight for Berlin. So yeah, definitely a good game by the Allies. I've, and out of all the countries, I find Britain is probably the hardest to play. You want your most experienced guy to play Britain. They're all over the map. They're really thinned out, and they got a lot going on. Um, and as for the Russians did put up more of a defense. Usually, this is my fifth game since getting the map early March, and for the first couple of games, Russia was just getting destroyed and like really quickly. So it was either my German strategy is pretty well, and that was this is not a good example of my German strategy. However, I did implement it the same way I did the previous games. Um, so I definitely got to take a further look into Russia and to see what other kind of strategies I could come up with to prevent this German onslaught. If you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. I have been looking at a couple of videos, a couple of the games previous um, made by Triple Crown, Captain G, Hilltop. So, all right, and for the Japanese, they didn't really have much resistance. China was just slowing them down. After a while, the Japanese just got tired of fighting the Chinese, and they wanted to get this war done with as quickly as possible. So, because they knew the Americans were going to join any time, and they wanted to put their money into their fleet, which they did. Pretty much once the Chinese battle was over, they kept adding ground-based units to take out FEC, as they did outproduce them. But a big chunk of their money was going into their navy, and it was just turn after turn. They were dropping, two battleships, a couple carriers. There was once they dropped three loaded carriers all at once. So if the Japanese are left unchecked, the amount of money that they can gather is pretty, like right now the Japanese have the highest income in the game. They're making they're making $130 with their bonuses per turn. So that's a lot to overcome, especially if you're only facing, like if they're only facing one country. That's for that country that they're attacking. That's that's a lot. Um, but at first it was slow going. Like it took them what 4 turns to even capture these islands. But once they got these islands, once they got these two, they got the bonus for that. They had a couple setbacks here. FEC did put up quite a good fight. Um, there was even a point where FEC had battle plans set up for the Japanese ally. It looked pretty. They were just 1 or 2 turns away, but it was like one or two key battles that didn't go FEC's way, and the Japanese just didn't look back from there. Um, so good job. Um, the Italians, you can't ask much more than this. This is if you're asking more than this from the Italians, um, I don't know. Couple of big mistakes that they did. Their first attempt into Cairo failed. Big mistake. Put them back quite a few turns. They couldn't open up the. So yeah, the big mistake. Cairo not going the way they hoped, which is kind of surprising. They had a superior army, but the British did hold off. They had better defenses, which delayed them getting Gibraltar. Maybe instead of going after Cairo right away, maybe what they should have done was build up here a little bit, take Alexandria, hold that to prevent the British bonus, um, and then take in Gibraltar. The Italian fleet is now in the Atlantic, but they're 4 turns too late. They should have been in there once Normandy fell. They should have been in the Atlantic. So definitely big mistake. Uh, there's nothing they could really do. Just the luck of how the battles get played out. Um, yeah, so definitely interesting game. Um, pretty happy how it turned out. I would highly suggest. So this game for people that are just joining us, it's called Global War in 1939 Ultra. The guys that came up with the rule set, Triple Crown, Captain G, Hilltop, and another guy, CB. All great guys. They got great content. Go check out their channels, and have a great day.